Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 6 of Culture Club X, powered by CultureMonkey. I'm your host, Darcy Mehta. CultureMonkey is an AI-powered employee engagement platform that helps people leaders listen to their employees and build stronger workplace cultures. Culture Club X is our global thought leadership forum where CHROs and people leaders share insights, discuss emerging trends, and exchange practical strategies for building thriving, future-ready organizations. Today, we are delighted to welcome Steve Cadigan, talent advisor, leadership strategist, and talent hacker at Cadigan Talent Ventures. Steve, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Great to be here, Darcy. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, so am I. So to give a little background, Steve is widely recognized as LinkedIn's first Chief Human Resources Officer, where he helped scale the company from 400 to over 4,000 employees across 17 countries during one of the most transformative periods in its history. Today, he advises global organizations including Google, Salesforce, the BBC, and leading investment firms such as Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, KKR, and McKinsey. Through his advisory work and his book, Workquake, Steve helps leaders rethink talent, leadership, and organizational growth in an era shaped by AI and constant change. Steve, throughout your career, you've challenged conventional thinking about talent by focusing on helping people become more valuable rather than simply making organizations more efficient. And that's why we're so excited to have you join us for today's conversation: why the organizations that make people more valuable in the age of AI will win everything. Before we dive into today's discussion, could you just share a little bit about your own leadership journey and what inspired your perspective on talent and the future of work?
Gosh, that's a big question, and it could probably take the full episode, but let me give just the highlights. I think my draw to the world of talent and culture really comes from my love of sport. And you and I were talking off air around this time that we're recording this, the World Cup's happening. And for me, I've always been a sports fan, and also an athlete. I love competing, but I really love to see how people handle different situations, how they handle, losing, winning, playing from behind, how they handle different coaching styles and so forth. And when I found out pretty early in my career journey, probably about 1 year into my first job, that there's actually a domain, there's a profession where you can practice that called human resources. For me, it was just love at first sight. I'm like, you're going to pay me to do this, to recruit teams and to put people together and try to find the best ingredients for success. And that was sort of my first job was at a company called The Spree in the fashion industry. And back in the mid 80s, that was a really hot company. And it was super fun to be in a place where they truly believed our talent is going to design the future of fashion. And I got to go on these recruiting trips to hire designers, which was really interesting. And but over the course of my career, I've had a chance to work in about 6 different industries. I went from fashion to insurance, went from insurance to high tech in the mid 90s when Silicon Valley was just booming. And I got really addicted to talent strategy in high tech because it's very dynamic. I mean, it was and is a place that is constantly facing all sorts of changes and challenges, and the competition for talent is fierce, and winning really matters. And so that's been probably where I spent the last 20 years of my career in that space, capped off by my last regular operator role, being the first chief HR officer at LinkedIn. And so I've learned a lot about myself during that journey. I think all of us over the course of our career find out, hopefully sooner rather than later, hey, where do I play best? What are my superpowers? What are the areas I'm not super great in? And in the world of human resources, for me, it was coaching, it was employee relations, sort of dispute resolution. It was acquisition integration was a big part of my career for about 4 years at Cisco. I worked on almost 50 deals around the world. And that kind of change management in high-paced, crazy environments was sort of where I enjoy working the most. Sitting around and looking at benefit and compensation plans, that's not my superpower, nor is it my super interest. So, over the course of my career, I gravitated more and more towards roles and organizations that wanted that capacity for me to contribute and were going to teach me how to be better at that craft. I think about 10 years into my journey, I decided I wanted to do HR for the rest of my life. So I went and got a master's degree at University of San Francisco, master's in HROD. And I think the best part of that was my colleagues and classmates were amazing. So I built a great network, but I also just built confidence in my craft, and I think I get asked a lot, why didn't you get an MBA? Why'd you get a master's of HR? And I said, well, I don't think it really matters. For me, I wanted to be surrounded by the people that loved what I loved. And it was the first time I ever went to school with a real purpose. When I went to undergrad, it was sort of like, well, that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And when you go get a master's, it's like, I want this. And it was really a big turning point for me. So I left LinkedIn about a dozen years ago. And for the last 12 years or so, I've been helping leaders, countries, companies build compelling talent strategies for a crazy world of work that we live in right now.
Wow, that is, I want to ask you so many questions, but thank you for sharing that. I mean, such a breadth of experience. And I love what you said about, and that's true that we all in our career journeys, figure out where our talents lie, where our strengths lie. And like you said, being surrounded by like-minded people who are passionate about the same thing is so amazing. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you knew that's what you wanted to do. And of course, the sports analogy, I am an athlete too, my whole life, growing up watching sports, playing sports. And absolutely, I always think that sports can teach us everything, in life and business, and all the lessons can be applied. And I've always said, I just think, just learning to be part of a team, right? We all have to learn that and all the different dynamics in a team. And so, I mean, I could go on. You're right. The sports topic, how that relates is a whole nother one, but it explains why we enjoy chatting about the World Cup, like you mentioned. So
yeah, 100%. And I think it's tricky. And the irony of my story, if I look back, was I graduated school and I had no plan. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was a history major. Modern European history. And everyone asked me, well, when does modern European history begin? I was like, well, that's a whole nother story. But I majored in that just because I was the son of a minister, and my mom was she was a daycare center volunteer pretty much in low-income neighborhoods in our community. And so my parental role models were really people who were doing good in the community and society. And business was not really something that any of my family was really excited about. So I'm sort of the one that got, like, what did we go wrong with that guy? My sister's an ordained minister, my older sister, my younger sister is a creative writer, and my brother's an artist. So, how I got into the world of business, I don't know, but I will say that I think, and we can get into this in the conversation if you like there is no greater art form than the art of getting people to do something better together. To me, that's like the ultimate joy. And so I do feel that I've been practicing art, and I do feel that the superpowers today are not AI as much as they are really bringing out your deeper human capabilities of communication and empathy and understanding and conflict resolution and reading body language and trying to listen for what's not said, which AI can't do. AI can hear what's said, but it can't see what's not said. And a lot of times, just simply in interviews, that's interesting, they never asked about this, or they never talked about that part of their background. That's fascinating to me, right? And so those powers, I find, have really served me well and continue to. And I think it's a sign of hope for the future that they've never been more important than they are today.
That's a really great take and positive take as well. And I studied political science in undergrad and didn't necessarily go on to use much of that either, but I find it interesting, and I love that you did history. I find that interesting too. So, okay, well, let's dive right in. And I'm sure a lot of this will come up in our questions too. So, okay, so most companies use AI to cut costs and replace jobs. You argue its real power is making people more valuable, which you just touched on. Why is that distinction the most important strategic choice of this decade?
Well, let me first address why most organizations are using AI in the same way that software technology has been used in the past. And that's really the answer in plain sight. We're using AI like we have prior technologies. Do more, go faster, save money, right? And that's something that AI can absolutely do. But I think it's a huge miss when, the greatest technology that we have at our disposal, the opportunity for us to see insights and intelligence we've never been able to see in such massive scale, for us to use that to subtract not add seems a real miss. And that's a big oversimplification, but I'm doing it to be a little bit provocative. Like, why wouldn't you use AI to build your business? If you can free up your workers and AI can replace a lot of the work they're doing, why would you eliminate them versus repurpose them to discover new markets, to use different skills, to maybe delight more customers in a different way? Like, why would you do that? It seems like it's a race to the bottom. Like, you're saving money now, but how are you making money? How are you going to make more money? And isn't that, in very simple terms, what the ultimate promise is for what AI can deliver to us? And if you want to step back even further, what's the whole point of technology if it's not to create a more beautiful world? Like, why are we using it? Because if you just cut and you eliminate people, that doesn't necessarily deliver a beautiful world, unless you're going to promise, a guaranteed income for people and the promise of free healthcare and all kinds of other things, which no one's really getting excited about or is comfortable with. So to me, that's a moment that most organizations are using the old playbook because there isn't a new one yet. We don't really do I have a confidence that I can actually retrain my workers to do more and greater? And the answer is probably not, because most companies, sad to say, aren't great at retraining or developing people. They need new skills. Okay, well, let's go hire them, And I know that because in the world of HR and all the people who are in the HR community who are listening to this, what's the first team let's let go when times are tough? The training and development department, at a time when we've never needed new skills faster than we do today. What are we doing? You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of the leaders are behaving this way because they're afraid. They're worried their competitors are moving faster than they are, and they're panicking, and they're not taking a step back going, okay, rule number one of change management, what do we want to change, and what's the best way to do that? Let's scare our employees by taking all of them out with AI. Yeah, that's going to deliver the greatest outcomes if we put a lot of fear into them. Maybe we should go ask Brene Brown. What does she think about that? Yeah, she thinks that's a bad idea. Creating a hostile, scary work environment doesn't allow people to do their best work. So why are we, perpetuating all these narratives of gloom and doom and job-ageddon, which we're hearing in the news? It's a huge disappointment to me that we don't see more companies saying, okay, we're going to use AI to make you a superhuman so you can do more and you can have a more fulfilling, more impactful, more amazing life, not just a job, right? And so that, I think, is the challenge of our lifetime right now for us to figure out. And I'll talk about this until my last breath. I mean, we really got the greatest opportunity of our lifetime right now. Let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I mean, I like the idea of reframing it. I mean, think of it as a challenge, a good challenge. How can we use people better versus that fear of it? And what you said about think about repurpose, not replace. I think that's just, makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yep.
So at LinkedIn, you outcompeted Google, Facebook, and Apple for talent, not by outspending them, but by making people more valuable. How does that philosophy become the playbook for winning talent in the AI era?
Yeah, this is another one of the enormous ironies, Darcy, of being the head of talent at LinkedIn during its period of biggest growth. So imagine, I'm the head of recruiting, head of HR at LinkedIn, whose main product is a recruiting tool, whose biggest company challenge is recruiting people because, we're not making as much money as all those companies as you just mentioned. I mean, Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, when they were hot, all those companies were making more, and Google was making more money in a day than we made in a year. I mean, that's how extreme this was. So they could out-benefit me, out-perk me, out-comp me, out-everything me. And so what we had to learn was, well, what assets do we have here to really compete against these really sexy choices that people have, right? And that's the one thing when I look at the pandemic, what I love about that scary moment for a lot of businesses is because a lot of companies realize, oh, we're going to have to really compete for people now, and it's no longer you're lucky to have a job. It's like, whoa, we got to really show. And if you compete for talent in the technology industry, I mean, you become a street fighter. Like, this is not an easy game and you're going to have to really innovate. And I think that challenge for us as a company who looked at recruiting, like, if our customers knew that we don't know how to recruit, like, that is not an option. We have to be really great at this. And the fact that we realized the only way we're going to double every year is if this whole company's mission is to recruit people, not just sell the recruiting product, but we've got to get all in. Board of directors, advisors, every employee is going to have to help us figure this out. And that was probably one of the things we did with our culture that was really great, was we really said the only way we're going to be able to realize our destiny of becoming a great company is if we hire not just a lot of people, a lot of great people, and that was what we were trying to do. And that's hard to do when great people have really great choices. And so what it really forced us to do, Darcy, was say, well, why would and this is a great question that I would really urge every listener to think through if you're struggling with recruiting, is start with a very simple question. And prior to LinkedIn, I've been in HR for over 20 years prior to LinkedIn, but I'd never asked this question. Why would someone want to work here? Why would a great person want to come here when they have lots of other choices with lots of other shinier, rewards? Why would they want to come here? And when we asked that question, the answer revealed itself in a really powerful way. They want to come here because the problem we're solving really matters. Helping people find their dream jobs. That matters. You want to go to Facebook and help kids develop their short attention span capability and proliferate fake news. Well, you go right on, and you can, destroy the minds of young children. Yes, you should go do that. Or you can help people find their dream jobs over here. I don't know. What do you want to do, right? Oh, you want to go over to Google and be engineer number 17,000 and buff the trophies of everyone before you? Or do you want to come here and build something incredible for your children, for your grandchildren, for future generations that are going to not just change their world, but change the economy and give greater transparency to great companies and bad companies, So that really helped us. And then the second thing we asked was so what assets do we have to attract people here? Because we can't outpay people, right? We just didn't. And so we said, well, the asset we have is, and again, this is in retrospect, it's going to sound, oh, duh, that was so simple, Steve. It wasn't that obvious back then. We realized that we're a professional network. If we are not the greatest place anyone's ever worked, we have no business being the network for professionals. Does that make sense, right? It's how could we say we're the network for professionals unless we are a phenomenal place to work? So all of us on the executive team, there's probably a dozen of us, said, we don't agree on much, but let's agree this will be the greatest job that our talent, our employees have ever had. And that was the ultimate cultural commitment right there, is that, we would begin every interview by saying, where do you want this job to take you? And how can I shepherd you there? What can I do to frame you getting there? Because I know you're at Silicon Valley. I know you're not going to stay here forever. That's okay. And so, but just to reiterate that question, I think every organization should have a really good answer to. Why would anyone want to work here? And just to jump the monkey a little bit here, the right answer isn't because we're nice. The right answer isn't because we like people. The right answer isn't because we treat people well. We have good leadership. We're going to make a lot of money. We're doing really cool stuff, because everyone says that. You've got to find a unique angle, because in the transparent world, thanks to social media and sites like LinkedIn, people can see other choices. So you got to stand out. What is different and unique about you and the problems that you're solving, right? And that really helped us not just recruit better, but build our own identity of what's our purpose here, and that really was a real rallying for us as a leadership team.
Wow, that's amazing. I like how you said, you had to think about how are we going to realize our destiny? I mean, first of all, so, and then, like you said, that question, it seems so obvious, doesn't it? That everyone would be asking that, why do you want to work here? And really finding that, but like you said, it's not that obvious. So definitely bears repeating for sure. So Deloitte's 2026 research finds that competitive advantage is now driven by the human edge, not technology, because AI is replicable, but people aren't, of course. Yet most organizations are still leading with technology. What are they getting fundamentally wrong?
I think we're looking for a shortcut. I think we're freaking out. I think we're tired. We're stressed. We're anxious. We're worried our competitors are moving faster. And we're there's got to be a technical advantage. And I understand why people are looking like that. And, thank you, Deloitte, for publishing that report after you published the other one saying that all jobs are toast and, it's all about future technology. So it's good that, they got a little bit of religion on that. But I think, take a look at the McKinsey State of AI report from the end of 2025 in December. Every company that's making a significant profit with AI, and only 6% of companies that McKinsey surveyed in 2025, thousands of them, only 6% are seeing a significant incremental increase to their profits. And so 33% of the companies were seeing an increase, but only 6% were seeing a significant increase. And they said, well, what are those companies doing differently? They're using AI to augment talent, not replace it, right? And so, I don't know, if you were, at the table in the 80s, Darcy, when there was this whole outsource to India movement. Like that was like in the 80s and 90s. Oh yeah, lower costs of labor. Like let's move all our development over to India. Yeah. And what happened to most companies is like, oh, for us to move all our development to India, we've actually got to tell them how we do what we do. Turns out we don't really know how we do what we do. So all these companies got stuck for years and, oh shoot, we don't really know how to explain that to someone else. That's the same thing with AI. AI is not going to learn how you do what you do unless you tell it to learn and teach it. And a lot of organizations are realizing, oof, there's a lot of gray area here. There's a lot of human connection that's not just A plus B equals C fractions. You know what I'm saying? Or algorithms. So that I think is the biggest challenge right now is people have got to see this is a very human moment. And if you start with, we're using AI to replace people, you've now introduced fear into the equation. Now everyone's playing career defense, not offense. And that's going to break your company. That's going to put toxins, poison into your veins, and it's going to slow things down dramatically. So, and we're seeing example after example after example of that right now. As we're recording this right now, all the major AI producing firms, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google with their Gemini, Microsoft, are all coming out saying, whoa, we didn't mean all those jobs are going to be, replaced by AI. And I say, well, that's really good because you're the ones that said that like last 6 months. You're like, oh my gosh, all white collar jobs are toast. There's no more will there be such things as internships and new grads. And now they're hiring like crazy. And a friend of mine just took the head of recruiting at Anthropic, and I was joking with him. I go, so what's your pitch when you're hiring at Anthropic? Like, join our company, but don't get comfortable? Like, come here and help destroy all the careers? Like, what? How are you going to walk that back after you just said, Dario Amodei, their CEO, just said, yeah, 18 months, it's pretty much over. And so it's heartening to see the walk back, but it's disheartening to see how brazen they were with all these predictions that were really harmful to a lot of organizations who's like, we better cut because AI is going to, replace all these people. And now they're realizing that was a big mistake.
No, it's so fascinating, isn't it? I know myself personally, I'm not one to jump into something just because everyone's doing it or, that panic is created. It's that little bit of like, let's see if the tide's going to turn back around, sit back and wait. So I'm happy to see a little bit of that personally too. And I work in the creative field too. So of course there's always that fear. But also what you said about, companies realizing there is a lot of gray areas and it may be hard to explain why they do what they do. But then I feel like that can actually be an advantage, that it's causing organizations to have this little bit of a shakeup to, hey, we've got to reevaluate. We need to see why we're doing this, how we're doing this, how can we do it better? So, obviously, I think if you're in the right mindset, that could be an opportunity, right?
100%.
Yeah. So you've said the skills shortage isn't an AI story. It's a development failure we created. What do you mean by that? And how can HR leaders begin fixing a problem they may not even realize they helped create?
Yeah, we're really in a pickle right now when you think about it. When I talk to organizations today, there's two big pain points that they've been facing. One, obviously, aside from AI, it's we need people with new skills faster. We need people to grow faster. But I just don't see the investment in that infrastructure, right? Most organizations have gutted, large to medium enterprises have gutted training and development. They've looked at it as a perk, not a core business process, right? And so let's just take, for example, what's been in the news a lot the last 6 months, that the disappearance of new grad and internships opportunities, right? And I visit college campuses all over the world, and the look on these kids' faces is like, what have you guys done? Like, where did all these jobs go? And the question is, like, if you realize you're lacking the skills you need as fast as possible, why are you cutting access to the generation that went through COVID in school and is probably the most adaptable generation in history, the generation that probably can figure out AI faster than we can, that can, run circles around us when we have some sort of Zoom problem, we don't know how to figure it out, and this generation, this young generation expects things are broken, and our generation expects things should work. And so they're going in with a complete hacker mentality, which is I can fix this, I don't expect it's going to work. And that we're locking out that generation is a huge miss. And so what I think HR leaders really need to ask themselves is, are you playing for today or are you playing for tomorrow? That whole, the best-selling all-time book on leadership is a book by Jerry Collins and Porras called Built to Last. Okay? How to Build a 100-Year Company. And my question for all the listeners is, how many of you really believe your company's being built to last 100 years or more like 100 months? Like, what do you, because a lot of leaders I'm talking to today, no, they're thinking like 5 to 10 years. That's it. We can't predict the future. We might not be around. Hence, why would we develop leaders? Why would we do that? We don't even know if we're going to be around in 10 years. Going to be some new technology is going to take us out. We're going to get acquired. We might go under because some other paradigm is going to take our value out of, being worthy. So, I don't blame leaders for worrying about an uncertain future and disinvesting, but there's consequences if you're not developing your people, the skills, and particularly leadership. That who's going to run your company in 5 years? Like, you're not worried about it? I would be. So, exactly. And I think, again, it's another one that when you lay it out, it seems pretty obvious. It begs the question, so why are so many companies not investing more in that? Who are you looking to build the next generation of leaders? If it's not you, who's doing it? Because your neighbor's doing what you're doing. Like who's some other country doing it? Like, and so we've got to wake up and say, we own that. We all own that, right? Deloitte, I sit on a board with a few members from Deloitte and a couple of companies, and I was like, how's the new grad going? Like, yeah, we stopped it. I'm like, you stopped it? Like, why? Well, because we're not sure about the future. I'm like, but the management consulting is like the greatest onboarding for any new grad because it's like a career buffet table. You've got all these different clients and they go out on projects, they get to see different cultures and leadership styles. And she's like, yeah, you're right. So you don't have a good answer for that, And if they're struggling with it, I'm sure a lot of other, really smart companies are too. It's a really challenging moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating too, because it's, being concerned about the future. Of course, that's one thing, but it doesn't mean you stop, right? It means you need to keep going. You need to keep hiring. You need to, you can learn how to navigate things as you're going too, obviously. And then it's also taking that long view and thinking about the future, like you said, like who's going to keep this running, right? So switching gears a little bit, research shows that 88% of employees use AI at work, but only 5% use it in ways that fundamentally transform how they work. What creates this gap between AI adoption and real business value, and who is responsible for closing it?
Oh boy, that's the $1 million question, right? I think that's a great question. And I think the answer is like everyone's responsible for this, right? The challenge is most senior executives that I talk to are still calling AI a tool. I'm like, it's a tool? Like, why do you call it a tool? Like, it's so much more than it's like the most transformative dimension that we've had access to. It's massive amounts of data and insight and intelligence. It's not a tool. Maybe like ChatGPT is a tool, but that's just one tiny, tiny feature of what AI is capable of doing, right? And artificial intelligence is basically crunching all kinds of data in ways and at speed that we've never seen possible before, which is phenomenal, right? And so the hard part is if the senior executives are calling it a tool, how are we going to get adoption? Because when you've got so much that's capable here, people are just afraid it's going to render them possibly less valuable, right? Like, why would I accelerate something that could diminish my power? Why would I do that? Simple question, right? Why would I do that? And I think we have a little bit of that going on, and a lot of uncertainty. I mean, look at all the press releases from Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, the CEOs of Microsoft and Google. They've flip-flopped, they've gone back and forth. They're not sure, even in their own organizations, how they're doing it. But I think Microsoft is probably the best example of someone who's sort of saying, okay, we kind of get this here. The big money is in helping organizations adopt AI. not selling an AI product, right? Same way the gold rush, who made the most money? The gold miners or the hardware stores? The hardware stores hit because they're servicing everyone. So who's going to make the money right now? The Deloitte's, the Microsoft just built a huge 1,000-person consulting arm to sort of say, okay, we've got to go in and help you figure out how to leverage this to your best possible, outcomes. But the biggest problem here that's now coming to light is security. Like, if you have all your employees running out using all these AI tools, asking all kinds of questions, it's going to reveal itself in the open, in the open market, what your trade secrets are. And that's not something that any corporate lawyer is going to feel okay about. It's going to cause a lot of sleepless nights, right? So we have to build a self-contained AI, solution inside our firewall and allow it to go out and retrieve stuff, but not show the rest of the world the kind of stuff we're retrieving. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot that needs to be worked out right now. And that's why we're kind of stuck, right? And I think it's, my starting point is every company should build an AI philosophy, a governing principles. Just like, here's our culture, here are our values. What's our AI philosophy? And do they align with our culture and our values, right? That seems to be like a good place to start. And every project should have, and I've talked about this for probably the last year or so, it's kind of humorous, but I think it addresses how simple and how profound we need to start. Every project you have should have like a food label, like a can of soup. What are the calories, protein, carbos, sugar, all the additives? Like, how additive or subtractive to our culture is this project? Are we going to add people or lose people? Is this going to be, what are the features that could break our policy on privacy, or could run us into some ethical conflict that we don't anticipate? Are we really looking at this stuff right now, right? Just look at the simple world of recruiting, HR folks who are listening right now. We have the ability right now with artificial intelligence to find out things on candidates that probably shouldn't be found. Like, have they been divorced? What's the value of their house? I can find that stuff out now. I just go to a Zillow. You give me your address on your CV. I see where you live. I can quickly go and find out who owns that house and how much is it worth. Or I could just tell Claude Cowork, go find everything you can on this person's finances, right? That's not in the state of California, where I do a lot of work. Like, there's a lot of legislation, like, but who's putting up the guardrails? Nobody yet. Who's supposed to put up the guardrails? Government. What's your confidence level that governments know about AI more than the people building AI? Not very high, right? So should the companies building these products be responsible for putting in the guardrails? Yeah, I think so. A lot more than they have in the past, because there's no government entity out there that's more AI sophisticated than any of these companies, right? That's part of the challenging moment that we face right now in HR. We have the tools to cross ethical boundaries in the blink of an eye, right? And it's pretty scary. So I think we got to really wake up and be very careful here, because there's a lot of missteps that you could unintentionally make in the blink of an eye.
Absolutely. I mean, you covered so many different things that are so interesting there. And I think, as you were saying it too, was my thought too, is that creating an AI philosophy, it's first of all, not just thinking of it as a tool, figuring out how are we going to use this, what are our thoughts about it and everything. And that's a great starting point, but of course, everything you said about security is also, we're going to probably be seeing a lot more about that. And funny that you mentioned security, because this brings me to my next question, but a different type of security. You often say that career security beats job security. And I really like that phrase. So what does a true career security strategy look like in practice, and how can organizations build it?
Yeah, the reason I say that, Darcy, is just because, the last 20 years, we've seen a steady decline in tenure in organizations. Like, people are not staying as long as they used to. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can talk about that. But the bigger question is, why is that, do you think that will change in the future? I ask this everywhere I go. When someone says, hey, people just aren't as loyal, they're not staying as long, I say, okay, well, we can talk about why, but let me ask you a bigger question. Do you think in the future that's going to change? Do you think we're just hitting an inflection point, and the next 10 years, people are going to go back to staying in the same company their whole career? Nobody I talk to thinks it's going to happen. I think, okay, so short tenure is here to stay. That's right. Okay, so trying to keep people a long time is playing defense. Trying to expect and believing that they won't stay here a long time is playing offense and optimizing for a shorter tenure. Okay. So And that feels really uncomfortable for a lot of our listeners, I know, because a lot of people were brought up in the world I was, where you get a bonus the longer people stay. If turnover's up, people looking at you like, hey, something's wrong in your culture, your leadership, people are leaving. I'm like, nobody thinks people are going to stay longer today. So what we need to do is find out, how do we create value in a more fluid talent universe? That's a really fun puzzle to solve. Let's see who's done that really well. I don't know, maybe college sports can give us an example. In college basketball and college football today, every major program coach knows their best player is probably staying 1 year. That's it, okay? And because of the rule change and because COVID allowed, there's no penalties, there's no redshirt year if you change schools. And a lot of these, traditionalists are like up in arms, this is just so wrong. I'm like, no, it's not wrong. These kids are bringing tons of money to schools. They should have the freedom to choose where they want to go, play their, practice their craft. But look at some of these schools. This past year, we had 2 programs, Michigan in basketball and Indiana in football, that won national championships with almost entirely new teams. Nobody on the Michigan starting 5 was there the year before, and 60% of the roster at Indiana was new. They won a national championship. So what are they doing? They're onboarding people fast. They're rapidly building teams. They're dramatically finding ways of building cohesion and chemistry. They're teaching simpler offenses and simpler defenses that don't take 3 years for players to learn to optimize a system. They're like, we got to find a way to relate to these kids, to get them to gel and to understand a simpler offense. So what's the flip in terms of HR? The flip in terms of HR is you flip to say, I know you're not going to stay here a long time, but I'm going to make you better for your career. However long you stay, that's why I'm not going to try to keep you here. I'm going to try to make you better. My hope is if I make you better, you might want to choose to stay here. Clemson University is one of the few football programs that almost nobody leaves. I don't know what Dabo Swinney's putting in the food over there, but they're doing something right that nobody's leaving. They haven't won a national championship, the doubters would say, but in recent years. But so that's what I'm talking about. Like, let's have an honest conversation with people. We know folks are going to stay. Let's have it be, I know you're probably going to leave. Let me make this the greatest experience you've ever had. So if and when you do go, you're going to refer all your friends here because you're going to know this was a great learning experience for you, right? And I'm going to celebrate that I got you a better job. And if I get you a better job somewhere else, I'm going to tell the next people that I'm hiring, hey, come here and look at so-and-so. Susie got a much better job when she came here. Do you want to go get a better job? That's cool. Let's have that conversation. Now, a lot of traditionalists are just terrified by that conversation because they've been, using that old paradigm playbook for years. And I was part of that, building that playbook. But I think today we have to have a more intelligent, more mature conversation, recognize we're not going to be able to keep people here as long as we used to, and figure out ways of onboarding people and getting them productive really, really quickly. And I think college sports is a great place to look because there's a lot of lessons there. Coach K was the last holdout in college basketball. He was like, no one's coming to Duke unless you're loyal and staying here 4 years. And then he was starting to lose to Sister Mary School of the Basketball Challenge. And he's like, we're going to have to change the program here, and we're going to have to do the one and done. And look what he's created. Like, some of his best players are there 1 year and they go on to super, careers, and they figured out. So one of the things Coach K had to do was, I've got to recruit all the time. Got to do it all the time. And that's not fun. And for college, because they opened up the rules now, he's got to not just recruit from high school, recruit from every college in the world.
Yeah,
and
that changes things.
Is hard. Yeah, yeah. But it can be done, right? And it's very uncomfortable. It's not easy, but I think that's the wave of the future.
I mean, change in its essence is uncomfortable, but that's a good thing, right? That's how we grow as well. And so it's more also about accepting it, like you said in HR, that people aren't going to stay, not bemoaning it, accepting it. And then it's a fun puzzle to solve,
Correct.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I love your positive outlook on everything and on the future. And just, it's like, well, this is where we're at. How can we adapt? How can we grow? So I love this next question because it kind of forces you to give me one thing. So what is the one non-negotiable action every CHRO should take in the next 90 days to start building the human advantage before their organization falls irreversibly behind?
I think one non-negotiable, it's a good question. I'm buying myself time here trying to answer slowly. The one non-negotiable is the investment in making people better. It just has to be like you can say, yeah, we got great coffee, great food, great building, blah, 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 great 401k matching, whatever you want. But I think talent is loyal to learning more than anything today. And if you can fill that hunger and that thirst, just make me better for an uncertain future. Don't promise me a job. Just make me better for an uncertain future. And so what that looks like is building learning in the job. Doesn't mean a lot of classes, a lot of, tuition reimbursement. Build learning in the job. That's the one non-negotiable I would say today. Like, yes, you got to, deliver productivity. You got to do some things, but we also got to give people new challenges and new opportunities so that they can continue to grow and help us adapt our business as the world adapts around us.
Build learning into the job. No, I agree with that. I love that. Great answer. So how can real-time employee listening platforms like CultureMonkey help organizations understand whether their people are genuinely becoming more valuable or quietly falling behind as AI reshapes the workplace?
I think the most important thing with employee listening is that if you're going to listen, you better do something with what you're listening to. I mean, it's easy to listen. It's hard to take action on that. And most of my career, I've done employee listening and employee surveys. And when I tell a manager we have an employee survey, what they hear is more work for me. And that's disappointing. And so the tendency, if you're a perfectionist, like a lot of us are, is that, well, let's find all the stuff that's jacked up. No, what you want to find out in listening is all the stuff that's working well, so you don't stop doing that, right? And you keep, you replay to the people who are so generous to give you that feedback. This is what we heard is working really well. Is that right? You want us to continue that? Okay, here's one or two things that are really irritating you that we're gonna take some action on, and we're gonna have a town hall, and we're gonna want your help. And this is the one big thing that I think a lot of companies, and I got it wrong many times over the course of my career, is you think as a leader, when you see something jacked up, I gotta fix it. No, you don't have to fix it. You have to help getting it fixed. You have to help get it fixed, I should say. So that means like, okay, the people who are the loudest, squeakiest wheels, guess what? You volunteered yourself to help us figure out how we, solve this problem, right? Let's figure it out together, right? And so that's the way you open the door to, this is not just a huge action list that I'm going to run into as a leader that's going to be painful, or we're going to have to say no to a bunch of stuff and everyone's going to hate me, right? Because we can't do some of the things they want us to do. It's like, I've had to say no many times over the course of my career, but when you tell them why, they respect you so much more than if you just say no. Because if you say, we can't do that because it's cost prohibitive and it's not fair for this other party over here, and it's inconsistent with our culture. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Do you understand why we can't do that, right? I had one time at LinkedIn, I'll give a quick story here. We had an office in the middle of Silicon Valley that is probably on a good day about a 45-minute commute from San Francisco. And we had a very loud group of San Francisco employees say, we need a free shuttle because Google's got a free shuttle and Facebook's got a free shuttle and, Apple's got a free shuttle. We need a free shuttle. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go do some research and I'm going to come back to you and we'll have a conversation once I have the research. So I looked into 2 buses in the morning, 2 buses in the evening was going to cost us $250,000. Then I looked into what's the real demographic spread of our employee base. And there were more people living further away than San Francisco in disparate other parts of the Bay Area, some down Morgan Hill, way down to the south, some in the East Bay that had a longer than a 45-minute commute. And so the group in San Francisco was a pretty small minority. And so I said, okay, here's the data. This is how much it costs. This is what percentage of the population that lives in San Francisco, and this is how many more people are living further away. Do you think this is a good use and a fair use of our money? The answer they all said was no, but thank you for looking into it. So
wow.
Like, yes.
I love that.
And so I could have just said, no, screw you guys. You know what you're doing. That would have just made the situation worse, right? And did it take some time? Yeah, it did. But it bought me trust, right? It bought me some trust. Now, 6-9 months later, the population of our employees in San Francisco grew to the point where it was like, okay, now we need to have a bus. And so we wound up getting the bus in the end. But that was a seminal moment where these surveys, present you opportunities to build trust. And that's really, I think, the game that you want to win in the survey business. build trust.
Absolutely. It's not just about, like you said, fixing every problem or saying yes to everything, but explaining it. It builds transparency and trust on both sides. And it shows that you have confidence in your employees that they will also understand. And you're kind of bolstering them that way too, to say, hey, let me read you in. This is the reason, giving them an opportunity to understand that. And like you said, many of them, they did, so it worked that way. So
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. Well, I could keep chatting with you all day, and you've been so interesting. So thank you so much. And your insights have challenged many of the traditional assumptions about AI, talent, and leadership. One message stood out clearly throughout our conversation. Organizations that invest in making their people more capable, adaptable, and confident will create a lasting competitive advantage in the AI era. At CultureMonkey, we believe continuous listening plays an important role in that journey. By combining pulse surveys with real-time employee feedback, organizations can better understand how employees are adapting to change, identify skill and engagement gaps early, and create environments where both people and businesses can thrive together. And before we wrap up, Steve, how can our listeners connect with you to continue this conversation or learn more about your work?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. And thank you for having me. The best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. You can follow up if you have any questions directly. I also have a website, stevecadigan.com. And you can find my book on Amazon if you're curious. You're also welcome to email me directly at steve@cadiganventures.com.
Okay, amazing. Well, I'm definitely going to connect with you as well. And, thank you so much again. And
Great.
to all our listeners, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe. And that's a wrap for this episode of Culture Club X, powered by CultureMonkey. I'm your host, Darcy, signing off.